Hi, I'm Kevin Tetz, working with LMC Truck to bring you some technical information and how-to videos that we think are going to make your truck restoration project go a lot easier. In this video, we're going to give you some great techniques and tips when it comes to properly installing body side moldings, whether you're at the same stage as us with new polished paint or whether you're just trying to replace existing worn-out components. We're also going to address an issue and give you some tips on replacing drip rail moldings. That can be kind of tricky, and we'll walk you through that process as well. We're also going to show you how to install a 3-piece back cab molding kit, whether you're dealing with new sheet metal or you want to do like we're doing and give your base model truck a little bit of an upgrade. Now, back in my body shop days, putting a molding kit on one of these trucks consisted of grabbing the giant roll of body side molding and cutting each piece individually with a pair of cutters, something like this. And although there's nothing wrong with doing that, LMC Truck has made this job a whole lot easier by offering long and short wheelbase pre-cut molding kits. The molding pieces are shipped flat, so you don't have to unwind them. They're protected by a sock to keep the chrome finish nice, and the double-sided tape is already installed. In fact, there's even a guide to show you exactly where each piece goes on the truck and a corresponding letter on the back side of each piece. Now, word of caution, you want to make sure that you're above 70 degrees Fahrenheit to put this on to make sure the adhesive takes. LMC Truck also offers this clear sealing pen, which puts a clear sealer that's UV resistant on the ends of the molding so they don't deteriorate in the sun. Now, the bedside corner moldings oxidize over time, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to polish that out. And when they get damaged, it's very difficult to repair these pieces. LMC Truck offers a solution in the new bedside corner molding kits that come with their own trim clips, and they match the side molding perfectly. The 3-piece cab molding set is a really nice touch and comes with the 2 corner pieces and the back piece, steel clips for the corners, and plastic trim clips as well as screws to replace the T-studs if you need them. The drip rail molding frames are EDP coated for great corrosion resistance, and they have a soft backing for a good weather seal, and they won't scratch your paint during installation. The stainless trim looks just like the factory trim, and LMC Truck even offers replacement hardware if you can't reuse or can't find your old fasteners. We're going to show you how to install and remove this stuff without any drama or damage. Now let's talk about tools. A tape measure, a couple of screwdrivers, and something to cut with always come in handy. We're going to be using safety glasses when we drill. We want an 1/8" bit for a pilot hole, and a nice set of sharp drill bits helps too. For tape, you want masking tape to protect your painted surfaces and plastic fine line tape for laying out your body side molding guides. I'll show you how to use that as well. A couple of markers always come in handy, and since your painted surfaces have to be super clean, I've got spray glass cleaner, paper towels, microfiber, and an alcohol water mix to make sure that we've got a perfect surface for our adhesives to bond to. Now, as far as time goes, you want to block out a good solid 8-hour day with no interruptions to make sure that you've got time to calm down and relax and think your way through these processes. This is not complicated on a difficulty scale, probably 2 out of 5, but you do have to focus and concentrate because you want it right the first time. Let's get started. You'll also need a 9/32 socket set or drill driver, and a 3/8 wrench comes in really handy. Ratchet wrench, even better. The body side moldings start with the bed corner moldings, and the 2 clips need to be installed. Now, we can get a clue from original one. The spring steel clip goes at the back side or the back corner that meets the tailgate, and the sliding one that's threaded goes towards the front. So the spring steel clip gets slid into the reliefs and just kind of floats in right about there. The threaded one, the same way. They're designed to be able to be moved around and adjusted, because like all these pickups, the bed sides are not exactly identical. They vary from production year to production year, so on and so forth. Now, you can start these speed nuts by hand with your fingertips, but what I found works better is using a 3/8 wrench, putting some masking tape on the hex head of the speed nut, just kind of jamming it down into the 3/8 wrench. That way, when you're down inside that taillight pocket, you can press it in and use the ratchet mechanism to thread it on. That way you don't risk dropping the speed nut down into the bed or losing it under the truck. All right, so we've got our hole here for the spring steel clip and the hole here for the threaded clip. This goes in here gently. We're going to try not to scratch the paint. There we go. Now both sides are lined up in there. We're just going to put some gentle pressure at the heel of my hand, there, until that thing centers in there. There, and it fits just like that. Now we'll deal with the nut. So we can see where our stud is. I've got my nut taped to the 3/8 wrench. It's going the right direction. So now I've got to use two hands kind of and press it on. The trick is getting it started. And once it starts a couple of turns, thread it in there. You can take the tape off. You can snug it on a little bit, but you don't want to tighten it all the way at this time. Just something like that, because the molding itself has to be able to be lifted out for the side molding to be placed underneath. Good. I'm using my alcohol cleaner to make sure my painted surface is perfectly clean. We're using the 1/4" fine line or vinyl tape to pull a straight guideline so we have a place to place our moldings where we can get a nice, crisp, exact, perfectly straight line down the side of the truck. Now, the way you use this tape is very simple, but it's different than most people assume. What you want to do, instead of pushing it down as you go, that's never going to give you a perfectly straight line. You want to utilize tension and one of the virtues of the tape, which is the fact that it stretches a little bit. So we're going to tack one in underneath the molding, because that's our guide for the placement, right about there. Now we're going to let the tape out a little at a time so we don't stretch it too bad, and I'm dragging it all the way down the side of the truck. So now what I can do is sight my line, and I can get a real good idea where my trim pieces need to go, just like that. Now, because I've got tension on the tape, I can see that it's dead straight. Now, when I taped out my two-tone lines, I paid really close attention to original photographs as well as measurements and notes that I took. So, right here, the bottom of the molding is right at about 12 inches from this top style line right here. And our corner molding confirms that. But as it gets towards the front of the vehicle, now it's about 12 3/4 down to here, takes a gradual slope down. Let's check out in front of the wheel arch, even more different. Now at the front of the wheel arch, I'm right at 13 inches from the top of the style line. Front of my bed, that's 13 1/4-ish, but what I'm looking at is a reference point here. The truck sits at a rake, so it can kind of throw you off a little bit, but the fuel door and this line here, this panel gap, is about right. So we're gonna stick at about 13 inches as the height of our bottom line from these wheel arches forward. Again, I'll double check. Right at 13, right at 13. I've got a nice straight line here. So my fuel door is not going to look goofy with the molding on it. And I'll just keep transferring the measurement down. So now that we know we're 13 inches down from the top of that style line, I'm going to make a reference mark here. Another one, right here. And then when I pull my tape, tack it in, I know that we're going to be parallel and straight. Now, confirm that by sighting down it. It's nice and straight. We like this. So now we're going to measure the width of the molding, transfer the mark up to the top, draw another line, and we've got this perfect runway for the peel and stick molding to go down. Our molding is 2 1/4 inches wide, so I marked that off on the truck, and we're laying down a second tape stripe as a quick reference. So we're going to start with the corner molding, and like we said, this is a replication of the original piece. With the pre-cut set, The rear bed piece is designed to be peel and stick and wrap all the way around, which is a nice thing if you don't already have these corner moldings on your truck and you just want to upgrade to the body side molding that the Silverados and the Sierras have. However, I really like the look of these trim pieces right here, and we're going to keep it more original. What that means is when we stay with the corner bed moldings, we have to trim this side piece off. And that's not a big deal because we know that there's an inch of space between the wheel arch or the wheel lip itself. So I marked that. So now I can hold my piece here and I can mark right where the edge of the corner molding is. And since we've got a little bit of slip rim because it goes underneath this corner molding, and it's a bit forgiving. So we're right in the ballpark. Now we can take and trim this piece and then install it. Now we'll take a speed square. Here's my cut line. And we'll use the monster cutters. All right, so we've got a little bit left over, but that's okay. We can always trim more off. This gives us a little bit more wiggle room. All right, so now we've got our piece trimmed. We're ready to install it. Here's how I want you to think about this. Once the adhesive is stuck, you don't have a second chance, but you can use the edges to your advantage. So we'll peel the bottom off, and on the top row of adhesive, just peel a tail, kind of fold it under. The other side, same thing. We'll just peel a tail and fold it under. That way, we utilize just the bottom edge of the bottom section and just tack the top corners. And if it's in the right spot, well, we can pull the rest of the backing off, smooth it in place, move on to the next piece. If it's in the wrong position, we can still save it because only part of the adhesive on the bottom is stuck and just the ends on the top. Now I'm going to tuck the end under the corner molding. There we go. Just slip it in there. That way it's aligned up and down. The black lines are aligned. Make sure my tails are out. And I just follow my guide on the bottom. Now I can take a look and I can do a line of sight on my tape and I can see if I'm straight and aligned. And this piece looks good. And keep in mind that this back piece between the wheel arch and the end of the bed, well, it kind of goes down at a slant. So you don't want it perfectly aligned, otherwise it won't match up with your corner. Do that, and we can just press it down. Now here's where your microfiber comes in handy. You don't scratch the surface, and I can really bear down, and I can press that adhesive in. So our letter guide tells us that we have D, E, and F. D, E, and F right here. It makes it really easy to install. I'm peeling the backing off the bottom, finding a tail on either end, lifting the tail up, and then gently setting it into place, making sure that I'm centered in that fuel lid and just barely above my bottom guide. Now I'm just barely touching it in place there, and I'm touching the corners because I want to be able to wiggle this thing around. And by the way, take a look at my two-tone lines here. I can actually straighten out a mistake in my paint job by using this Precut molding kit. Got everything peeled away. We take our piece that's labeled F. We find our perfect spacing between the fuel door and the side, and I'm using my tape and I'm carefully tacking down just the bottom edge of it. And I tack my corners, and I still haven't peeled this away, and here's why. The top edge of these three trim pieces, it really matters if it's lined up and dead straight line of sight. So a straight edge like this, a paint stir stick, a yardstick, as long as it's straight, will work and help you align that top edge. Now this is a piece of milled aluminum. I know it's perfectly straight, and I've got masking tape on it to protect my painted surfaces. So this is simply a process of just confirming what our tape tells us and making sure that our top edge lines up. Now this shows you the beauty of leaving your tails out and have it just a little bit stuck, because you can move and you can adjust that trim piece up against your straight edge. So now I know it's touching and everything looks lined up now. Now I'm certain, because of my straight edge, that both of these pieces, that both of these pieces are lined up perfectly. I'll give it one last quick check, and I can even line of sight eyeball it. And now I know that I'm pretty well lined up with all these pieces. It looks like a professional did it. Okay, so for the last three pieces, we've got the fender, door, and the cab corner. To install the remaining moldings, just use the same techniques and your tape guides to get perfect alignment. Keep in mind the door molding needs to have a larger space at the front to keep from binding on the fender when you open the door. Once you're happy with the placement, the tape guides can come off, and this project is done. Using some alcohol on a towel, the reference marks will come off easily without damaging your paint. Using the sealing pen on all the edges will make sure that the side moldings will last us a lifetime. Now, installing the drip rail molding frame is really straightforward. There's 7 fasteners and they get screwed into place in the original holes. The nut driver works well to install these fasteners, but a quarter drive socket set does just as well. The drip rail molding is quite simple to install, but it's easy to damage if you don't do it properly. There's a technique that I'm going to show you, and it's based on how this thing is made. It's stainless steel, which kind of keeps its memory position. It's almost like spring steel, and it's an internal locking mechanism. Here's what I mean. The drip rail molding acts like its own retaining clip. The top side sits on the top edge, it gets hung over top of the lip, and the bottom side gets rolled on and snaps back, pinching the drip rail molding on the frame itself, working very nicely. Now, when you're installing this, you don't want to start at one end and work your way down. You want to start in the middle. And the ends have a certain amount of overlap that fits perfectly on the frame. So you got to find your position. It's easy to do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm setting that top edge all along the top of the frame itself. And now all I'm doing is rolling it, heel of my hand. I'm rolling it down, and progressing. And then I'll come back on this side, making sure that I'm hooking that top edge over the frame, and I roll it down there. Same thing here, there. See, it went around. Now, heel of my hand, very gently. There, hear that pop? That's the sound. Okay, leave that alone, come back to this side. Okay. You want to resist the urge to tap on it. You want to try all you can to roll it into place. It's a little stubborn right there, and it's a little stubborn right up here. If you get to this point and you can't roll it on with the heel of your hand, don't smack it. Here's a trick. It hasn't locked in right here. I don't want to hammer on it, so I'm using something to spread the load when I do actually tap it with the heel of my hand. These wooden paint stir sticks work really well, so I'm just going to bridge it That's all, well, no, one more. That's all it needed. Now I can run my fingertips here and I can feel it's not locked in there, it's open there, and it's locked into there. So I'm just going to continue to try and roll it on. And again, it doesn't want to cooperate, so I can, there, hear that sound? That's the happy sound of a drip rail molding, finding its happy home. There we go. That's a beautiful thing. No dents, no muss, no fuss. Now, if you ever have to remove the drip rail and you're concerned about damaging, here's an old school trick. This is nothing more than an old school bottle opener. What you do is, of course, protect it with tape so you don't scar the molding, and just gently pry up on the molding itself, releasing it. Let spring steel overlap. Just work your way in, and eventually it'll come right up. The last project on this video is going to be the 3-piece cab molding set. We think it gives a nice upscale look to this truck, and since our truck didn't come with this set of moldings originally, we're going to show you not only how to locate the proper position for this molding set, but also how to install it without damaging your paint or the moldings. Using 1.5-inch masking tape, I'm taping from the top of the bed frame to just underneath the window on the back of the cab. This allows me to make any markings I want for fitment, as well as start and stop again, bringing the moldings up to the cab without risking damage on the paint. Now I could just go ahead and tell you where this goes. It sits on the cab corner and kind of underlaps the drip rail molding just a little bit, maybe 1/4 of an inch. However, do what we did. Find a couple of other trucks with this trim set on it, take some reference photos, and use that as a guide. It's got a natural position because of the contour of the cab. I'm going to just outline it. I'm going to hold it in place with some masking tape. And move on to the next piece. These pieces interlock. It's like a sleeve from the corner to the back piece. It just slides into place. And like so. I'm not going to jam it too closely in there. This is just mock-up. Now, just kind of eyeballing it. Using my masking tape to hold it in place. Because it's aluminum and it's lightweight, and it doesn't take much. This way, we can release the tape if we have to move it. Now with this corner piece, I'm just going to slide it into place, interlock it. We're just going to let that float, make sure it's level. Now, if you think this molding looks like it's traveling uphill, well, you're right. Even though I've got it the same distance from the drip rail on either side, that tells me that's not a good thing to measure against. So what I'm going to do is let this float on the tape and get a measurement here. So I am 1 3/4 to the top of the trim on this side. Now, I need to let it down. Well, there's a good reason for the masking tape on the paint. Now I am 1 3/4 on this side. So that is going to give me a nice parallel molding strip that is measured against the cab itself, not something else. Even the bed, be careful measuring against the bed, because it can sit a little funny too. Bed can be adjusted. Once this is locked into place, hard to adjust. The trim clips for the 3 pieces, well, there's a steel clip for each cab corner and 5 plastic clips that go along the back of the cab and get screwed into place with these screws. Here's how it all works. Now this end of the corner piece is a sleeve, and it slips into the back piece and keeps it flush with the back of the cab. But here we've got a steel clip with a stud. Hole needs to be drilled obviously, but here's how these clips fit in. The rounded edges they get just twisted underneath the shoulders or the lips of the molding, and this steel leg gets popped in behind, holds it into place. The good thing about the steel leg is that you can just flip it back out again, and you can adjust it if you've got a different hole location. Simple. These clips have the rabbit ears on the top, and there's a channel that your clip slides down typically into a T-stud. With our shouldered screws, you can see that it holds it in place. Now, that also tells you that this is the side that faces the molding. This is the side that's flush with the cab. Where these are inserted, pops into place like that, and that's what holds it in place. If you have to remove them, they slide out the side. We put these on the cab first. Now, with the back cap piece turned upside down, I can see where the clip fits in the molding, and when I've got my molding centered in my lines that I traced out, that tells me where the clip goes on the actual panel, which is right with these rabbit ears sitting right on the top line that I traced. Simple. So armed with that knowledge, I know how to center the clips, and I've got my dividing lines for the 5 trim clips spaced out evenly. I know where they go. So the final destination for each screw is going to be right there. I can transfer the mark all the way down so I know where to drill. I'm using a 5/64 drill bit so the mounting screws have a nice tight fit. The corner piece trim is the steel trim, and it sits exactly in the middle of the trim piece itself. So obviously we split the difference, go down the middle here, but you want to make sure it's centered in that cab corner as well to make sure you have access to this fastener, which is going to be inside the cab corner. So we're going to say middle ground right about there. We're going to start with our small bit for a pilot hole, but finish off with a 1/4 inch bit to give us just a little bit of adjustability with that trim clip. The shouldered screws are actually industrial yellow zinc coated for corrosion resistance. All right, so I'm going to center up my molding, hang it on the rabbit ears. All right. I've got each clip marked with an ink pen across the top so I know where to press down. And I'm just using the, well, I'm using the heel of my hand if possible. There we go. There's one. Make sure we're re-clipped in. I'm going to go to the other side. There's 2. You want to use even pressure so you don't dent the trim. Oh, that's already clipped in. That's clipped in. Nice. That was easy. Now we'll snug the side in using the speed nut with the washers to prevent any moisture from coming in. And since this is an open panel, it makes it really easy to thread it on by hand. I've got lots of room. I'm going to take my 3/8 ratchet wrench, righty-tighty, and we can snug this guy up. All right, we'll leave it a little bit loose for now. Snug it up when we know we've got all 3 pieces working in concert. Finishing touches, body side moldings, drip rail moldings, even a piece of trim that your truck may never have had, really give it a lift and give it that final detail that everybody loves to see. And I hope this video shows you that installing these pieces to where it looks like a professional installation might just be a little bit easier than you think. I'm Kevin Tetz. Thanks for watching.